Hey everyone, John here from Gaming in the Wild, and I've got an exciting indie game video for you today. Last week was the October edition of Steam's Next Fest, the tri-annual festival of indie demos where we get to try out as many games as we can make time for and get a taste of tomorrow's indie hits. I always look forward to Next Fest and play as much as I can. This time I squeezed in 20 games, including some hyped titles that I've been looking forward to a lot, going hands-on with some games that I was on the fence about, and discovering a few brand new hidden gems as well. So in this video, I'm going to run through some of the most promising games that I played, and then I'll round things out at the end with a best of the fest top 5, both from myself and as voted for by this channel's patron community. In case you don't know, this channel has a supporters community on Patreon, and every Next Fest we open up a doc where people can vote on the games that they've been playing. We then tally up the best of the fest, both from myself and from the patrons, and that goes into one of my videos. You're welcome to come and join us next time around, and there will also be a Games of the Year vote as 2025 draws to a close. So hop in for $1 if you'd like to, link on the screen now. And with that, let's get into it and talk about Steam Next Fest October 2025. The first demo that I cracked open this Next Fest was Winter Burrow, and I've played and enjoyed a few farming crafting type games, but I sometimes feel that when you've played one, you've played them all, so it was up to Winter Burrow to make itself feel different, and it really did buck that familiar feeling through sheer craft and personality. The intro sets a tone of Dickensian hardship and heartbreak, because you play as a young orphaned mouse who returns alone to his dilapidated family home after his parents die in the city. The name of the game is to try and set the place up as it's become overgrown and tumbled down, and to carve out a new life. This initially involves finding wood for the fire and stones and twine to repair the tool table, but every time you step outdoors to try and gather materials, you're presented with some cold and hunger meters that will creep downwards for every second that you're out in the frozen wastes. So it's a cozy crafting game, but it also has an element of peril in the survival gameplay, and it walks an interesting line between that cozy crafting feel and survival with stakes. I really enjoyed what the demo had to offer. I think I got up to the point where you get enough twine to make yourself some warmer clothes that will let you stay out foraging for longer, and I was quite addicted to that loop and curious to see where the story would go. I found it to be very charming and more interesting than I expected. It's out on October 12th, that's Winter Burrow. The next game I have for you is Forestrike. This is a game that picked up a lot of hype in Next Fest. People were really gelling with it. And I don't know about you guys, but when I'm burning through a lot of demos, the last thing that I want is a really long story intro. And this game has one of those. It has an overlong intro with more than 20 lines to read, and we're not getting invested in a story when we're just playing 20 minutes or half an hour of the game in a demo format. We just want to taste what the game is, you know. But luckily enough, the game itself is really cool. It is a pixel art brawler with a twist. That twist is Foresight, a skill that lets you play through a fight multiple times in your mind until you're ready to do it for real. This means that you get to practice a fight as many times as you want. You can experiment with different moves and see what the right combination and sequence of events is to get past the enemies that are on hand, and then you execute the solution that you've discovered in the real fight. It's a really good concept, but I found that the difficulty ramped up quite quickly with projectiles, grenades, charging enemies, shielded enemies, heavy enemies, and so forth. And I think that it's pretty clear that this is a game that's going to have a high skill ceiling and a lot to learn, but in the demo format, I felt like it speeded me through some of the steps, and it could have broken things in more gently. I was also disappointed to find that it's not a straightforward linear adventure where you work through a sequence of scenarios, but it's a roguelike. I rolled my eyes when that came up. I really wish that this was more of a Katana Zero kind of thing. You know, just an engaging story, an intentional story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the demo is still up, and the full game comes out on the 17th of November via Devolver, which guarantees it plenty of attention. That's Forestrike. Next up we have Scrabdackle. This one is by indie developer Jake Friend, and it's being published by Fellow Traveller. Fellow Traveller are of course the Australian indie powerhouse publisher behind titles like 1000 Times Resist and Citizen Sleeper, so their involvement was enough to get my attention. Scrabdackle is a simple top-down Zelda-like game with an MS Paint vibe to the art. It's very scratchy and simple and charming, and you play a wizard who crash lands in a strange kingdom. You have to find your way around, talk to the locals, and find your way back to wizard school, which means exploration navigation, combat, side questing, puzzles, and so forth. The dialogue is very light and fun, and it borrows from the Oxenfree system, where you can either keep talking to the person that you're in conversation with, or just walk away at any time. You don't have to disengage via the UI, which I think makes for quite a dynamic conversation system. I like that part of this game. The problem with this one was that I hit a bug within about 10 minutes. Having recovered my wand from an island in the middle of the lake, I got a button prompt to hit RB to attack, and then I was thrown into a combat gauntlet. But unfortunately for me, the button prompt just didn't work. Every time I hit RB, even if I tried to equip the wand and that kind of thing, nothing happened basically, so I was hard locked out of progress and just had to quit there. Bit of a shame because I was quite enjoying it, but hopefully that bug gets fixed for the full release, which is coming in Q4 of this year. So for now, that was my time with Scrabdackle. This next one was a big hit with me. It is Beyond the Board. I first encountered this game at the London Games Festival, where I did actually do an interview with its two young developers for the Gaming in the Wild podcast. I'll put a link on the screen now if you'd like to hear that audio episode. And Beyond the Board is an exploration puzzle game based very loosely on the concept of chess. In the opening seconds of the game, a chessboard explodes inwards into an abstract 3D world. And in this game, you play as a castle, which can only move in a straight line as per the rules of chess, but it can move in 3 dimensions, which means it can wrap around columns and go up and down walls and so forth. You'll face ingenious puzzles with sequences of timed switches that you have to figure out, and duels with other chess pieces where you have to push them off a ledge as they try to avoid going down. This is a very cleverly designed and well put together game. It's a really good concept, and it has crisp visuals and a fittingly spacious soundtrack that gave me a sense of wonder while I was playing it. My only ding against the game is that controller support is janky and not quite there, and I think in this world of Steam Decks and PC handhelds and hopefully eventually console ports, that absolutely has to be sorted for this game to be a hit. Maybe that's part of the reason why there's no release window for it as yet, but stick it on your wish list. It's definitely one to watch. A very promising game. That's Beyond the Board. This next one is one of the breakout hits of the festival, and I love games that focus on detailed traversal, where just moving through space is the name of the game. I was a big fan of Death Stranding for that reason. The way it turned hiking into an ongoing exercise in problem solving was really, really cool. I was also a big fan of Don't Nod's Jusant, which gamified rock climbing. But Cairn is another rock climbing game that goes one further. It attempts to simulate rock climbing in a more granular way. You start off by hitting L1 to zoom out and view the rock face so you can plan your route up. You'll then approach the rock face and hit X to climb. This gives you control of the climber's right arm, which you use the stick to maneuver towards a handhold, and then you hit X to grab. This moves control to the climber's first leg, which you move to a foothold and then hit the button again, and that's how it works. The result is an extremely slow, methodical, and satisfying simulation of rock climbing, where you very slowly inch up the rock face one handhold and foothold at a time. You also have stamina to manage. You have to try and find good handholds and footholds, or your climber's limbs will start to shake and they'll start to make panicked sounds, so you know you're going to fall if you don't get a better hold soon. That's my only critique of the game. I felt that sometimes my climber's responses weren't quite enough for me to know that I was about to fall. It's a little bit vibes based, and I maybe could have done with some meters or something a little more technical, but overall I really enjoyed the game. It's soothing, it's satisfying and challenging, and there is some other stuff in there too. You have to forage and cook and tape up your fingers for the next climb. You have to set camp and find water. This is the demo that I played the longest at Next Fest. I played it for an entire 2 hours, and I'm really looking forward to tuning into its frequencies, slowing down my mind and climbing that mountain when Cairn releases in Q1 of 2026. And while this channel and this roundup is mostly about indie games, I'm going to squeeze in something that's being published by Atari here in the shape of a true curiosity, Bubsy 4D. It's really funny to me that Bubsy is still a thing. They're kind of a C-list platformer mascot from the days when everyone was racing to be the next Mario or Sonic back in the 1990s. Although, to be real, Bubsy was a bit of a failure. It was closer to Zool or Croc, if you remember those guys, more than Crash or Spyro. They have since become an odd kind of meme platform mascot who had one well-regarded 2D game and then a series of universally slammed 3D platformers that just didn't have it. How we now have a Bubsy game in 2025 is something of a mystery, but it will definitely scratch an itch for people who miss the heyday of 3D platforming, and that means warts and all. One of the big issues with early 3D platformers was the camera. It's a solved issue now, but in Bubsy 4D, the camera goes haywire like it did back in the day. It gets caught on scenery, it zooms inside Bubsy's head, and it gets stuck behind things, so you can't really see what you're doing from moment to moment, and I can't decide if it's bad or if it's knowingly bad and kind of retro bad. The same goes for Bubsy's moveset. You start with a quadruple jump that includes 2 normal jumps, a Yoshi's Island style heave in the air, and a long belly flop maneuver. You do feel very mobile, but it all chains together in a really janky way. I feel like this game is destined for cult status, and it might just become a speedrunner classic, or a cult classic at least, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to be a good game, in the traditional sense at least. I guess we'll find out when it launches later in 2026, but this game is, I think, the one that I would be least surprised if it got delayed. It really does need a bit of extra work, but for now, that is Bubsy 4D. Another curiosity this next fest was Thrasher. It's another musically focused game from the developer of the critically garlanded rhythm rails game Thumper. And this game is a very freeform game, and it's a very different proposition. It shares some of that sci-fi Lovecraft gloom of the first game with a similar mixture of chrome and organic shapes, prismatic color, and a feeling of being in a deep void. But that's about all it shares. In this game you play as a shimmering serpent with bubbles that pop up on screen, and you have to pop them as quickly as you can with swift serpentine movements. It is usually possible to pop all of the bubbles in one fluid, graceful motion, but you do have to learn the turning curve of your serpent and how it darts and moves in a really speedy way. This means that more often than not, you'll find yourself doubling back or doing loops to try and pop the bubbles as the clock ticks down. More wrinkles are introduced as the demo goes on, like barriers that harm you if you hit them and other moving obstacles that will conceal or shield the bubbles that you have to pop. Clear enough levels and you'll reach a boss who throws slightly more complex versions of the same puzzle your way. The presentation of this game is excellent, but I didn't quite connect with the gameplay in the way that I was hoping I would. The central premise felt a bit simplistic in a way that I wasn't quite expecting, and I wonder if that's because this game is designed primarily for VR, and in VR you guide the serpent with your hand, with your finger. You just point where you want it to go and it goes there, so perhaps that has a much more connected and fluid feeling to it. The game is actually out now for Quest and for the 10 media reviewers who managed to get their hands on an Apple Vision Pro, and it is coming soon to Steam, and I'm wondering if this game is really going to translate in the way that the developer hopes to the controller. I'll be rooting for it. It's a good concept. That's Thrasher. Another game that's heavy on the creepiness is Reanimal, an impressive horror game from the makers of Little Nightmares. In this game, you play as a child who wakes up on a speedboat that is floating out at sea. You follow some red flashing beacons through the fog and rain and the rolling waves and find a girl floating in the water. She looks dead, but you pull her out. She turns out to be alive. She says, "I thought you were dead. What happened to the others?" setting up the scenario that something terrible has happened to a group of children. You sail the speedboat into the fjord and find a huge, towering factory with suitcases scattered all over the beach that you can open up. One of them has a key inside and then you're in. This was very effective. This was really foreboding horror. I got the feeling of being in the middle of a huge horrific disaster of some kind, almost Holocaust adjacent or something like that. You also got the feeling of being very small and helpless in a very big, scary world. It all really worked for me. I'm very drawn to the mystery of Reanimal, but I didn't get to the end of the demo this time. The screen whited out when I went through a certain door. I think it was a bug. I will also say that the performance was really notably bad, at least on my PC handheld, so hopefully it gets an optimization pass before its 2026 release. That's Reanimal. Three more games to go before the best of the fest, and I tried a few top-down adventures this next fest, and the best one by far was Hermit and Pig. I'm going to be real here and say that overtly cozy, wholesome vibes are as likely to put me off a game as making me want to try it, but the channel's community was going wild about this game in our shared doc, so I decided to give it a try, and I'm really glad that I did. It's a Zelda-like adventure where you play as a mushroom-foraging hermit with his pet truffle pig. The hermit is an eccentric who dabbles in psychedelics, not always intentionally, it has to be said. His mushroom identifying skills aren't exactly top-notch. But when a child from the nearest town shows up at his shack asking for help, he gets inadvertently pulled into a bigger story. The dialogue in this game is witty and sparkling from the off, and so is the combat. It has a unique system where you're faced with a selection of moves like punch, stomp, hit with your cane, and so forth. But to pull them off, you have to refer to the hermit's survival book and learn a sequence of button presses for each one, like entering a combo in a fighting game. And on top of that, you have to decide which move might be the most effective against a stinging beetle Reanimal or a rabid raccoon that is leaping out of the trash. So you end up frantically inputting these combos as your clock ticks down to the end of your turn and trying to figure out whether you should slap an aggressive crow or slingshot it. This was a really winning formula, and so much so that I stopped playing it because I already knew I will pick up the full thing, so it's a demo that did its job perfectly. That's what Steam Next Fest is all about after all. It's all about finding new games. This one comes out on January 22nd, so add it to your wishlist for sure. That's Hermit Pig. Another game with battling animals is Decktamer. This is an interesting spin on the deck builder where you can tame enemies Pokemon style to add them to your deck. The cards have really nice art, which I think is obviously important in a card game, and the basics are all in place here, but it was very fiddly to play. You have to select a card, select its attack, then back out, then select the next card, select its attack, and back out again, hit go. You then have to hit a button to acknowledge each attack that you've already input, and then hit a button again to acknowledge each attack that you receive. And this was just way too many button presses. It felt like it could have been an email, if you know what I mean. So these UX problems stopped me from getting into what the game is actually doing, and that's a shame because it is quite interesting. You have to do mental arithmetic to calculate your damage output because you really want to get the enemy cards down to 1 health so that you can feed them, tame them, and add them to your deck rather than killing them, especially as your cards have permadeath if you lose them in combat, so when you lose them for good. There's also some strategy here in figuring out the order of actions to try and hit first and stay alive, so there really is something here in Decktamer, but the game is coming out on October 27th, so it seems unrealistic to expect any changes. I think this is pretty much finalized at this point, which is a real shame because that UX is really holding it back. That's Decktamer. And the final game review before we get to the best of the fest is Slots and Daggers. It's a really fun fruit machine game that has an interesting spin on turn-based battling and roguelike progression. You find yourself looking at a fruit machine, presumably in a bar because you hear cheers sometimes when you do well. And at the start of each run, you pick 3 items you'd like to take on your run, and those 3 items will be the ones that appear on the fruit machine wheels. You can choose a dagger, a coin purse, and a shield. Those are the basic ones, and then enemies appear on the screen one at a time. You roll the wheels, and then you hit the button to stop each one. Some deal damage, some give you shields to protect you and so forth, so it's like Slay the Spire with an element of fruit machine chance to it. There's a stall between bouts where you can spend your coins to power up and buy boons, and then there are also tokens that you can use to power up over time and get permanent upgrades. And then you can also spend coins in battle for heals and specials and things like that. If you roll 3 of a kind, you will get a super, which adds a little cheer as if you're playing in a bar with people looking over your shoulder, which gives the game a really fun atmosphere, I think. You will hit a wall fairly quickly at first, but each run also unlocks new weapons that you can choose to add to the wheels, like a hammer that can stun enemies, like a greatsword with a QTE for extra damage. This is an addictive little game, I think, but I do feel that everyone's playthrough may be pretty similar. At least based on what I've played, you always get the same enemies in the same order and the same unlocks in the same order as well. So I do wonder how much chance there really is in this game of chance. The game is by Friedemann, who made Summer House. When I reviewed that game, I said it was a fun little thing that needed more game, and Friedemann has certainly tried to add that here. So good luck to them. I think this is the kind of game that is on trend, that could do well, that could get a lot of attention, that could go viral, so hopefully it finds its audience when it comes out on October 24th. That's Slots and Daggers. And just before we get to the best of the fest, I have a few shout-outs. These are quick hits that I wanted to mention that I didn't fit into the reviews for one reason or another. The first is Power Wash Simulator 2. I played the crap out of this game, and it is just more of the same. If you've played Power Wash Simulator, you'll know the formula. You're confronted with a dirty place that you have to hose clean entirely. You sweep torrents of water across the filthy surfaces and structures. You choose between a narrow power hose or a gentle mist and use soap for the tougher areas. You have to crawl under things and clamber over them to reach those hard to reach places, and you get that satisfying ping every time you complete a small section. It's basically exactly the same from what I can tell, but I had over 50 hours in the original Power Wash Simulator, and this had me in seconds. It's soothing, it's mesmerizing, and I absolutely love it. That's Power Wash Simulator 2, that's out in just a few days. I also want to shout out Exo Rally Championship. This is a sci-fi time trial racing game based on the excellent Exo 1, and as I was racing through demos quite quickly, I found this one to be surprisingly technical. I I think mastering it might take time, more time than I had playing demos, so I didn't quite get to grips with it in time to speak on it properly, but I wanted to mention it here because it's very promising. That's EXO Rally Championship. I also wanted to shout out Ambrosia Sky. This is a game I covered at the last Next Fest, so I skipped playing it again here. It's a space station salvage game with a unique low-gravity physics system. You go out on jobs to try and delve into space stations, salvage materials, and also find information about an infection that's sweeping across the galaxy. That's Ambrosia Sky. There was also Motor Slice. That's a sci-fi parkour game where you leap, climb, jump, and wall run through a vast megastructure. I love what it's trying to do, but the performance just wasn't quite there on my Ally handheld. You need responsive controls for parkour, and it wasn't happening, so hopefully that gets an optimization pass before release. That's Motor Slice. Whispers Among the Poppies was a pretty but simplistic 2D adventure where you wander through a realm of ghosts trying to solve their dying wishes. This means things like reuniting them with a pet or a loved one so they can pass on into heaven. It was a bit too slow and straightforward for me, but the presentation is really immaculate and some players in the Discord really liked it, so I'm putting it on your radar here. That's Whispers Among the Poppies. I also want to mention Constance, a very competent Metroidvania that I played last Next Fest, so I didn't want to play it again, but it's worth a mention. I think fans of Ori, Symphonia, Haiku the Robot, etc. should definitely check it out. And then the last honorable mention is Lumines Arise. The demo was already out before Next Fest and I played it before the festival began, and I already knew that I was absolutely in the bag for this game. I'm a big fan of Lumines. It's a falling block color matching puzzle game where the blocks, music and backdrops change speed and appearance every few minutes. This leads to a really addictive sensory overload, and in my case it's a genuine antidote for my racing mind. It helps to absorb all of those anxious thoughts that I have, so a few rounds of Lumines really helps me out. I'll be playing the full game for sure when Lumines Arise comes out later this year. Check out the demo if that sounds intriguing to you. That's Lumines Arise. And that brings us to the final section of this video. It's the best of the fest. This is where I round things out by running through my own top 5 games of the festival and also the channel community's top 10 games of the festival. In case you aren't aware, this channel has a wonderful patron community that you are welcome to join. Link on the screen for that now. Every Next Fest we run a collective doc where people add games and rate what they're playing. This allows people to cut through the noise and get hype on what the best hidden gems are at any given Next Fest. It's a really fun time. It helps me find games. It helps everyone find the best games. So a big shout out to patrons Slater and Dovetail for organising everything. And here it is. This is the community top 10 from Next Fest October. At number 10 was EXO Rally Championship, the technical sci-fi rally game. At number 9 was a game called Big Hops that I had missed completely. It's a very physicsy, cartoony looking 3D platformer. At number 8 is Ambrosia Sky, that space station exploration and salvaging game. At number 7 is Constance, the artistic Metroidvania that has a lot to offer. At number 6 was Winter Burrow, the Dickensian mouse simulator. And as for the top 5, number 5 was Love Eternal. This was a game that I didn't get to play because I had a glitch when I was trying to run it on the Ally, but it looks like a very stylish platformer with a strong story to boot. At number 4 was Forestrike, the real-time 2D combat game with that premonition mechanic. The Patreon number 3 was Lumines Arise, the luminous pulsing musical puzzle game. The second most popular game of the fest with the patrons was Hermit Pig, that charming minimalist pixel adventure with fun turn-based combat. And the patrons game of the festival was Cairn, the climbing simulator that rewards patience, planning and methodical slowness. And that brings us to my own top 5 games that were at Steam Next Fest October 2025. At number 5 was Beyond the Board. This is the game that shatters the rules of chess and puts them back together again in a really engaging, unique puzzle game. At number 4 I had Lumines Arise, the luminous puzzle game. I can't get enough of Lumines. I love the remastered game and I'm very excited for this sequel. It's a current gen take on that winning Lumines formula. At number 3, to my own surprise, is Winter Burrow, the crafting game that won my heart with its unlikely mix of cozy crafting and survival with stakes. I keep thinking about it. It was a really good demo. At number 2 was Power Wash Simulator 2. It is more Power Wash Simulator, and as such, it's one of the most soothing games that I've ever played. I just cannot wait to do more power washing. And at number 1, I agreed with the channel patrons in their Best of the Fest vote. It is Cairn. This technical climbing game has something really special going on. I love the way that you control individual limbs, and it's just so methodical and slow. It has been pushed back to Q1 of 2026, so they're ironing out some bugs, but I can't wait for the full release. That is Cairn. So there we have it. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like more like this in your feed, then don't forget to hit subscribe. Give me a like, give me a comment, let me know what you're playing. A big shout out to my latest patrons, Richard, Little Hamston, Cammy, I Love TJ, and Nicholas. And as always, a huge shout out to the boss tier patrons who helped me make this channel happen. Big thanks to Shy Guy, King Champ, Keris, Nate, and Susanna Maria. Thanks for watching. Bye bye for now. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you on the next one.